Welcome back to class. Today is week 8, day 1. I know our learning portal is being funky right now. Right now, I can't even to open week 8. So I copied over the lesson for today into a gist, and I just shared it with you guys right here. It's not complete. That's how life is. But I'm going to show you guys how we're going to do this, okay? Additionally, fuck, man. I can't find the fucking... I'm a little bit disorganized with this learning portal not opening. Give me a second.
It's like to do more like to do data, bro.
Yeah, but it's a full stack application, man. Okay, welcome back to class though, guys, for real. I hope you guys had fun. Who thought the to-do list was fun? Yeah, it's pretty fun. I was thinking about making this lesson about a to-do, man. We built so many to-do apps, but this is just such a great example of any type of app, man. Almost every single app, there's like a famous to-do list in it. Do you guys like going over the previous class, the assignment live? This is a poll here, okay? I'm gonna ask you guys because like Charles likes it whenever we talk about the projects that you guys have worked on, you know, like during Monday's lecture. But me personally, I like talking about new things. You know, I think that those of you guys who worked hard, you had learned a lot, you know. So what do you guys think?
I think it's really useful in the week.
In the week?
So for example, tomorrow, review what we did yesterday. I find that really useful. I quite like it if we've done a big project and review it together and present. But right now, see it crack on.
Anyone else? Okay, fine. I feel like it takes so long though, and there's just so much to talk about right now that I'm excited about, you know. All right, we're just gonna randomly sample someone's, okay? Who was really proud of their to do and wants to get their to do like code reviewed? Anyone? Any volunteers? Any volunteers?
Hi, yours is really good. Yeah, people like it.
I'm gonna clone his.
I bet you love it.
Oops. Okay, so right now we've just cloned Hi's project. You can see that we have our environment here and some other folders that he came up with. It looks as if these files contains like just variables or functions that he wants to use in other places. From the name of the file, we can determine like probably what the file contains, right? So for example, commands.py, we can see that we have some functions, and these functions write to the database under certain conditions. Let's go ahead and run it. Okay, so we can do Python setup database, and we'll do Python to-do.py. No file. Line 32. Or line 33. Name. Say again? And I'm trying to run the file, right? Oh, my bad, I'm running the wrong file, my bad. Thank you. Okay, man, it's time to put on our thinking hats. Do we have a database? Did I source my environment? Let's deactivate. Okay, I'll do source. Do I get to do pip install? Pip install. Okay, now let's do Python to-do.py. Now it's complaining about to-do.py, line 33.
To do.
What do you mean?
File to do.
Wow, shit, dude, I keep doing that. I'm so stupid, my bad.
Some shit in there.
Colors, attributes. It's kind of complicated here, guys. There's a lot going on.
This guy, like, video.
Non-ASCII XC2. I'm just gonna comment this out. See what happens. Oops. Line 33. What? Come on. Line 35 now. Holy fuck. Okay, let's think about this. Python 3 setup database .py. Okay, so we're gonna do pip install fire. Pip install fire. So we have problems right now. I think the problem is going on right now is that we shared this environment file. Quab, we're not supposed to be copying that one, right? Pip, like get adding it. What if I need to install all our dependencies again?
No, fine.
It says no module name. Fire. To do. Line 3. Import fire.
No, you don't have to install it.
Deactivate. So we do source. So we're in his project. This is why we need a setup, a readme.md, okay? Because I'm having problems right now. And this is part of our job actually long term is that we're gonna have to be able to clone some code and get it running and debug it just like this. For real, this is a part of our job. So now let's think about this. Source, we got our source. Python to Alright, so we got our original complaint. Non-user.
You have to install declare and language.
Can you link me? Where's that at?
That's what it was, but because he used some amazing thing, ASCII.
You link in there?
So
Like that, you mean? Okay, let's think about this.
close up now,
This one? Do you think I'll work on this one? This is a part of our job, guys. This is why in the future you guys are gonna learn about things like Docker. Has anyone here ever heard of Docker before? Yeah? Docker is basically a container. It's a whole bunch of more magic in programming, but just know that it sets up your environment so that it's exactly the same, and then you don't have problems with like cloning projects and running it. Okay? Because there's no perfect solution for this, and that's why things like npm and Pip install exists, and there are many other libraries just like that. But despite the fact that those libraries are built, they aren't perfect solutions. Okay? So let's move on from this right now. I'll give you guys a code review later. I want to get into this week's assignment, what we're gonna talk about this week, because we got a lot to talk about. Sorry about that. That was kind of a disaster. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about Flask, and most importantly, models, views, and controllers. Here, we made it.
Do you have the submission link?
For the homework?
Yeah.
Today.
Okay, so what we're gonna start talking about today is what actually I personally did learn when I was learning how to code originally, how to build many different types of websites, many different pages that like have the same types of styles and etc. Okay, so this is the old way of doing this. The plan is that on Tuesday today and Tuesday we introduce you to the M.V.C framework using Flask, and you guys are gonna see this thing called ORM sometimes. It means object. Relational mapping, yeah. It's just basically saying how do we connect our data. We've been doing that, right? We did that last week. We did that using Airtable and literally pointing it and then drawing a little diagram, right? And then ideally speaking is that if we did that correctly, we have a mental understanding in our brain of like how these tables map to each other, okay? Now we're gonna figure out how to do that using SQL and Flask. Actually, you guys did do that, man. If you guys got the to-do working, then you did that, right? You had to find the to-do based on its ID or based on the the user ID on it. On Thursday and Friday, we're gonna make our blog more complicated. We're gonna add comments to it.
So working on the same project all week.
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about making the Thursday and Friday one a to-do one. I like that one more. Depends on how well you guys do on this one, to be honest with you. This class is not like, you guys gotta understand, sometimes we move faster, sometimes we move a little bit slower, Because the thing is like, I think you guys could possibly do it this week, complete the whole blog, and then move on to other things, right? But real quick, let's talk about M.V.C and web frameworks. So this is the pattern that we're now going to have. You guys can see here on the left is our user, the browser, or Chrome or Safari or Mozilla, whatever you want to call it. The user is here in this square and they do something. When they do something, we initiate an HTTP request, and that request ends up here on the right. It hits what we call a controller. The controller is going to work together with the model and the view. And like this diagram, I wish it was more interactive, but basically just know that like there's a whole bunch of shit going on back in here. It's just like shooting data back and forth, okay? And eventually, whenever the controller is done with its work, it sends some HTML, some JavaScript, or some CSS back. I know that seems super complicated, so I'm gonna show you guys a very simple example in just a second. You guys are gonna hear this called a lot of different things, but model is gonna be an important keyword, and view/template. There are many different words for it, but they kind of mean the same thing, okay guys? But these three things you can think of as being almost three different files. It's gonna be three different files, and each one of these files is gonna have its own responsibility, but they're all going to work together. There are a lot of frameworks other than Flask that will also follow the same pattern. Django, Ruby on Rails, ASP.NET, M.V.C.NET, just an infinite list, because this is such a it was such like a revolutionary pattern when it came out that like just almost the entire web is built on a pattern kind of like this. Yeah, I'd say almost the entire web. But anyway, it's some variation of M.V.C, okay? Model, view, controller. There are other models, but we're not going to talk about those in this class. In Flask specifically though, we're going to use SQL Alchemy and Jinja 2 in conjunction with our Python files. Okay? So we're going to use 3 primary libraries, something called SQL Alchemy, Jinja 2, and our Flask Python files. Do you have any questions so far? Huh? Okay, so in your guys' research, you guys are going to see that there are 2 primary competing resources, or frameworks, competing frameworks in Python for building web apps, Flask and Django. We're doing the simpler one called Flask, and basically you can think of it as kind of like a market in which we get to choose what we want. Okay, we're going to choose the ingredients and we're going to cook something on our own. But Django is kind of like a restaurant where like they've already chosen everything for you. Either way you still get food, either way you still spend money, but you know, like it's kind of different because you get to choose what the parts that you put in. And the reason why we're going to do this is so that you guys can understand that like there's a whole bunch, I think it'll give you a better understanding of it, to be honest with you.
So
it's a lot more work.
To understand Flask, is it fairly easy to pick up Django from that basis?
I would say so, yeah. I'd say so. Yeah, same patterns.
They're both usable in the same scenarios in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I would say that Flask is, if you get the idea, it's pretty much, it's less magical, man. Yeah, because if you use a big framework like Django, there's a lot of things that like are hidden behind the scenes, like a lot of like secret variables and secret things that you can call that you need to memorize, right? If you use a framework. So what are the things that we need to memorize, guys? Can someone tell me something we've had to memorize inside of that we just know that this piece of code will give us something?
Date times and things like that.
Yeah, datetime.new or process.environment or process.environment.react app, some variable. We have to memorize those things, and that's built into the framework, okay? Yeah, so anyway, Flask is more just bare minimum, and then you guys are going to choose what we want. There's a whole bunch of stuff like admin panels, okay? Yeah, that's actually something that Django does really well. You guys can find some really sexy admin panels. Once again, Flask is better learned. You'll understand all the pieces of the puzzle. On GitHub, they're about the same amount of stars, but Flask is actually newer by 5 years and has the same amount of stars. So it would stand to reason that it's actually more popular given less time. Ooh. That's what we're about to learn how to do, guys. Kinda. Okay, we're gonna start simple at first, but by the end of the week, I'll show you guys how to do this, okay? We're gonna build APIs. APIs that allow us to manipulate data. Do you remember IMDb? Imagine if you were allowed to delete movies and add movies and come up with playlists and change the tables at that place. Then you guys would be able to, you guys would have an API, but you guys were just consuming it, and they didn't let you guys do whatever you wanted, right?
What's a microservice?
Microservice is like, it's like a smaller version of an API. It's focused on one thing only. And it's like you can easily turn it on and off. It's kind of the idea. Okay, so here's some interesting facts. Flask has only 500 lines of code. It has 1,000 lines of tests, but 5,000 lines of documentation. Because there's a lot to learn. Okay, so in just a few minutes, we're gonna show you how to get set up. We're gonna do hello world. We're going to route. We're gonna create a template. We're gonna look at a form, and then we're also gonna manipulate a database.
If you're routing with Flask, then what's the point of React Router?
Because imagine that you wanted an API that could give data to a phone. React Router right there does not give data to a phone. It only works in the web browser. So you can't build a mobile app right now that makes a request to get data from that web application. You need an API that will provide data.
So React Router does not provide API. Cannot.
Correct, not to a mobile app.
Yeah.
Here's some steps. We got to memorize. Here's a part of being a developer. Memorizing some commands. Or writing them down somewhere and then remembering where you wrote them down later. Okay, you got two options here. Here's the basic code. You guys can see that we have some setup where we import Flask. We define a variable called app using this Flask library. And then we define on line 4 a route. What route is this, guys? Yes, that's the home route right there. That's typically what it's called. Or root. Root is also acceptable. And below that, you guys will see that we define a method. And you can call it method whatever you want, but it should be something meaningful. And then lastly, we return a string. But we're going to do something fancier using Flask. In conjunction, here's routes, guys. This concept I told you guys wasn't going away. So we're going to be thinking about our routes while we define our methods in our Flask application. Okay? Here's another example. This example, you guys can see that we can pass in a variable to our route. Right there. That's called not a wildcard. What do you call that, a wildcard? An ID. This ID is username. The @ is called a decorator. It just gives our method a little bit of magic inside of it, okay? It gives our method a little bit of additional magic. Once again, we're going to be templating, and our templating will be using Jinja 2. We can inject Python code into our templates using this syntax right here, okay? So we're going to be injecting Python code. And then you guys will see here, once again, we have a route. The route will take its own argument. The return value will be a call to render template. And then we're going to be passing in a variable, okay? This is a function call. The first argument is the name of a file. The second argument is a variable that we're passing in. Sorry, guys. I know this is a lot of theory right now, but I'm going to show you in just a second, okay? SQL Alchemy. Okay, SQL Alchemy. Pip install SQL Alchemy. And this is where we define some data, some relation on a database, okay? So anyway, ORM, Object Relational Mapping, is a way that simplifies querying our database that just makes our life easier. I know it seems complicated, but it solves a lot of other problems that we have. It's not that complicated, guys. We're just going to be calling functions. Okay, we're going to be calling functions within these libraries that we import, and we're going to be passing them arguments. Those functions will be giving us back values, and we're going to look at those values, and those values will determine what we do in our conditionals. And then at the end of this, make sure to remind me to show you guys a Flash shell. All right, so here's our code. Let's get to it. CS. You guys all see the app? Did you guys look at the instructions I sent on Discord? Yeah? Okay, so look, here's the app that we're gonna build today.
The one on GitHub you sent us.
This one right here.
Legit.
So here's the app that we're building. You guys can see that it's a blog app. You can say, hello Sierra. We can create this data. And then we can see that hello Sierra is at the bottom. So this is a list of, posts. And what's important about this data is that it's stored to the database and we can all manipulate it. You guys can all create a blog post and you guys will see that every one of you guys gets it. All right, so I'm now creating our new project, P-Blogger. Once inside of here, I need to do what, guys? I need to do something. I need to run like Python 3 -m v. What does that do? It creates a basic Python project for us with like a library, a folder that has all of the libraries that we need. Afterwards, we're going to do what? We're going to create a file. We're going to call it app.py. And now I'm going to look at the instructions because I forgot what I'm supposed to do next. No, first I need to source. Okay, so I'm putting on my shoes. I'm getting ready for work. And then we're going to open up our code editor. Okay, so now we need to do what? We need to do, where did I share those instructions? We got a pip install flask. We need a pip install flask right here. We're gonna pip install SQL Alchemy. Oop. I ran my app. We do Python app.py. What? Python. Oh, because I don't have anything in here. What's the one command? If main, there it goes. If name is equal to main, then we're gonna do app. Oh, we gotta import app first. Import. Man, I forgot the syntax. 1 second, guys. Okay, guys, you can see this is the basic code to set up a Flask application. We need to import app. We need to import Flask. From Flask, import Flask. Sorry, I always get this confused. Afterwards, we pass in this secret name variable, okay? This is just a secret variable that like always lives. You guys can look at it by running print. Right here, it's the name of the file. So we run Python 3, app.py. Okay, we didn't install pip yet. Oh, my bad. Source. So now we do pip. Okay, now we do Python app.py. And you can see what? The name right here is equal to main. It's just something that we have to memorize. Anyways, afterwards we set up our database with SQLite and we name it the file right here. So when we run that file, when we run this file, we should expect to see SQLite database right here, a SQLite database appear. Okay, I did something wrong. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I think I just do app.run. App.run. I forget. App.run, debug is true. That's right. App.run, debug is equal to true. Run Python app.py. Okay, there we go. So we just started our Python application, or Flask application. Guys, this is something called a process, okay? It took 8 lines of code, okay? 8 lines of code right here. But this process is now living. Sometimes this process will live, sometimes it will die. Right now it is living because we ran the command and like this, it's just sitting there and it's waiting for stuff to happen right now, okay? But specifically, I want you guys now to know that it's running on port HTTP 127.0.0.1 port 5000. If you click it, you open it up, you guys will see that it complains 404 not found. The requested URL was not found on the server. If you entered the URL manually, please check your spelling and try again. What it's saying is that we have not yet defined any routes on our Flask application, right? So at the root of our application, there's nothing to show. So how can we fix this? So yeah, we're gonna find the route. So we're gonna do app.route, and then we name the route. And then afterwards, we have to specify what it accepts. So we're gonna say methods equals an array. So this is where we name which type of HTTP verbs that we're gonna accept, okay? So we're gonna say get right here for now. On the next line, we're gonna find a method, and we're gonna call this one root. That's a method. And then we're just gonna tell it what to do. In this case, we're just gonna return a string. We're gonna say hello world. Okay? So that you guys will see that whenever we save, it kind of auto updates. And then we go back here and we test. You guys will now see that our application is producing a string called hello world. Okay? And it's sending it back to the server. This is a full stack application at this point, sorta. Do you have any questions so far?
Every function should be called root, or it's
No.
just the way you name it?
I just called it that because that is in fact the root of our application. This is the root route. But I'm gonna make this more complicated later, don't worry.
Okay.
Notice how right here we only have hello world inside of our entire body, right? We go to this URL. It makes it makes a request to a server, like right here. The server gives it a response, and what's the response? A single string that says hello world. We can also put HTML here, guys, which is kind of amazing. What would happen if we did this? What would happen to this hello world?
Becomes an H1.
It becomes an H1. Incredible. Because our server, this is what happened, okay? Before we move forward, I want to show you this diagram. This is the simplest example, and I'm going to show this diagram and think about it again real quickly. Okay, so we're the browser. We made a request to where, guys? Can someone tell me what the request was?
4,500.
Yeah, something right here. Exactly, Ed was right. We're on our browser. We made a request to what? What is living right there?
Your code is there, essentially.
Our process is living there. This thing right here. On line 7, you guys can see the URL. It's a process. And specifically, this process is called a server. You guys can see our server is living right here, and it's actively listening for requests. Okay? And on our server, this is at the bottom in our terminal, you guys can see what's called our server logs. It's just going to write down everything that happens to it, okay? This is a fundamental concept to understand. So right now I've cleared the terminal. I want you to understand that if I type in this URL, right, and I hit enter, I'm going to go make a request to my server. The server is going to be listening for that request. After it gets through that request, it's going to initially when it gets that request, it's going to determine whether or not it understands the request, right? If it understands the request, then it's going to wrap it to a method right here. So right here, this is the root route right here, okay? I'm gonna type it in. I want you guys to look at the server logs. That's the most important thing, kind of. I don't know, everything's important, okay? Look at this thing right here. Okay, so I'm gonna hit enter. Oh my God, whatever. And did we get a request to our server, our process? Yes, we did. And specifically, we got a GET request to our root path, okay? And when we were at that root path, we returned an H1. And that's exactly the behavior we observed. Okay, so I'm gonna show you something more complicated. We can define many paths. So we're just gonna say coder school. And inside of here, we're gonna say, I'm learning at coder school. So now how can we get it? the coder school want to run. Oops.
Have to enter the root.
Oh, I did this twice. I cannot name a function twice. My bad, you can't do that. So I want to see the H1 on line 15. Can someone help me figure out how to do this? Where coder school? Did I go to facebook.coderschool? No? Localhost? Would that work? And then /coder school, would this work? And it does in fact work. So you guys gotta understand, this is a process, okay? And this process can live and it can die, and one day you guys need to make it live all the time. That's gonna be a part of your job if you guys wanna be back-end developers. This process can never ever die. Does Facebook ever go down? No. Does Google ever go down? Okay, this is your baby right here, this process. And this process, it needs to be able to understand many different routes. It needs to do different things at different routes. Okay? And it needs to manipulate the database at different routes. Is that clear, everyone? Okay, so now we're going to do more. So I've shown you guys that we can have at one route, we can have one content appear, and then a different route, a different piece of content appear, right? Right? See how these are both doing two different things. Okay, so what if you have the same piece of content that you want to appear on two different routes, right? And you want to save it. So we're now going to use we're gonna try a pattern called templating. Okay, this is the templating. This is the view of M.V.C. So we're gonna create a new folder. We're gonna call it templates. And once again, you guys will see that templates is a special folder name. It expects it. And now inside of here, we're going to create something called base.html. Inside of HTML, I'm going to do base thingy. I'm going to do the my HTML5 thing. And then I'm going to start injecting stuff into this template. So we're going to do this double curly brace pattern, and we're going to call it block head. And then we're going to do end block. I'm going to copy this down. I'm going to say block body. Okay? And then afterwards, I'm going to create another file. Actually, no, let's start small. We'll just leave this right here. And then we're going to go back to our routes. So from Flask, we need to import something else called render template. It's a different little package that's inside of Flask. Inside of our root, instead of returning a string that has an h1 inside of it, we're going to call this function, okay? This is a function. I'm calling it. That seem clear? We have parentheses there. It's a function. When we call this function, we need to name the file that we want it to render. And what are we going to name it? We're going to call it base.html. Let's just see what happens, okay? So inside of our base.html, let's put an h1 here. We're going to call it base.html. Now if I go over to the home route, I refresh, it complains. In a print statement, you got head. Block. I feel like my syntax is right. Alright, fuck it. I'm gonna delete this right now. I'm gonna move forward and figure out how to do this in just a second. Okay, that works. So right now, it's at our home route right here, right? At our home route on line 9 through 11, we're rendering our base.html, which has this magical thingy inside of it, right? This h1 on line 10 that just says base.html. But that's actually kind of stupid. We need to do a couple things here, right? We need to render a bunch of different things here. So we're going to follow this pattern called extending. So we're going to create a new file. We're going to call this one home.html. And inside of here, we're going to do, why isn't my extension working? JExtend. You guys got to download this VS Code extension called Jinja 2 Snippet Kit, okay? So we can say extends base.html, And inside of here, we can do more. What can we do? Let's try to do H1. We're going to call this one home.html. Okay? So inside of our render at root on line 11 on the left, instead of rendering our base, we're going to render our home. And I want you guys to think about what happens next, okay? We want this base on line 10 and this home on line 3 to both print on the screen. We want both these files to be kind of put inside of each other. So we're going to refresh, and we see that that does not work. The reason why that is because we need to do one more step right here. Please work. Ginger. Body. I'm gonna cheat. Sorry guys. Block content. In block. Oh my bad. In block. Let's get our body here. Block content. Okay, so we have a block called body. So now we need to have our home produce that block. There we go. Sorry, this is some syntax that we're gonna have to memorize, guys. Come on, please work. Block body in block. Block body in block. Extends. What? My bad. So bad. Okay. So sorry guys. I fucked that one up. So you guys can see what's going on here. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry, I keep saying that.
Yeah, can you wrap everything up from the beginning, what we should do with the
Within base, put block body and block, and then
So just know that there are certain things that we don't want to type again and again and again, okay? On each page. For example, the head tag, the document.html. Inside of our base right here, we're creating a block of code which will be injected with another template, okay? And how, like, do you see on line 11 of our app.py right here? Line 11 of app.py. Inside of here, we're calling a template to be rendered with the render template function call. When we name that template, it automatically knows that it's supposed to look inside of a folder called templates. It has to be called templates. It cannot be called anything else. It's going to look for a file called home.html because we specified it in the function call. Inside of home.html, you guys will see that at the very top, we say extends and then the name of the file. So it's going to say, hey, I'm going to take all of that file and I'm going to put myself inside of that file. Okay? And what is inside of myself? Well, we have to have an additional step where we name like the piece of code that we want to inject into base.html. We name it right here, body. Okay?
if you called it something else, you have to change it then within your base as well, right?
Exactly, right here.
That was your error before.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The content and it was body.
Yeah, so right here, if it's called body right here, I have to call it body here. I can call it whatever I want. If I call it hello, that would also work. Also works. But the idea here is that you're gonna have many pieces of code stuck in there. Watch, I'm gonna show you an example. Many different blocks, and you can name them whatever you want. Okay, we call this one body. Call this one body. Body. So we're gonna save right here, and look at my title, guys. See right here, it says localhost 5000. What if we wanted to have another block that said, I don't know, block head, and then we're gonna have size kind of small, in block, and inside of here we're gonna have a title, and this title is gonna say newsfeed, blogger. I'm gonna call it blogger, right? So what can we do? How can we make this be injected into over here? Exactly. Right there. So now you guys will see what? If I refresh the page, what's going to happen to our title? It does in fact change. But what happens if we go to coder school? What would happen to that title then? It does in fact disappear. So now we can take this thing right here and we can do what? We can do some more. So we're going to repeat this pattern, except instead of doing it for for home, we're going to call this one coder school. And then we're going to do what? We're going to create a new file, call it coderschool.html. Okay, and inside of here we're going to do what? We're going to just copy all this, okay? Except we're going to call the title here coder school. And then we're going to call this one coder school.html. Okay? I'm sorry that was super fast, but watch what happens, guys. So now you guys notice that our base.html is extending coderschool.html at path/coderschool. Our title has also changed. What happens when we go back to home though? Our base extends our home file, okay? And the title also changes. Okay, guys? So that's the full pattern. Going back to this diagram. Fuck, man, I don't have that board. Just know that our browser, we made a request to what URL? Localhost 5000 / either nothing, if it was the case of root, or /coderschool, or whatever. Based on that resource that we requested, a certain controller was run, and that controller decided what to do. Okay? This thing right here, all of this magic right here on line 15 through 9, that's called a controller. Okay, it's controlling what will happen at what endpoint. Okay? It's gonna say, hey, at / I want to render this thingy, at coder school, I'm gonna render that thingy. That's called a controller. Right now, we haven't hooked up the database yet. I don't even care if you guys do that correct.
And
right now.
It always looks for base, right?
No, you can call it, so they're gonna be different parts of your website. For example, you might have an admin part, and then you might have two different bases, right? Might have like this one, all the UI elements, it's like 2 columns instead of 3 columns, and then you're gonna choose a different base component. And that's gonna do different things. But basically know that our controller talked to our view. It took some data inside of our base.html, some home.html, it produced an output, and then it did what? It talked to our view, and then it took that view and it sent it back to our browser.
So if you didn't put extend instead of base.html on, say, the coder school one, we're no longer just going to see base, we're just going to see coder school.html.
Exactly. But you don't want to do that. And the reason why we don't want to do that is because I'm going to show you why we're going to do this, okay? So we're going to do bootstrap. Get bootstrap. And do our getting started. We're going to copy this thing right here. We're going to jump over to the top of our base. And now we will have bootstrap on every single one of our files.
Yeah, Lloyd, which one is the model, which one is the view?
The model, we don't have the model yet. I haven't shown you how to hook up the database yet.
So we just got
Just know that in a second we're gonna do a lot more complicated shit inside of between line and 10. Before we return on line 10 or on line 11, inside of this thing called root, we're gonna do a lot more complicated shit. Don't even care. I don't even care about that right now. Right now, I just want you to know that you can produce a bunch of different views. Okay. Before we break, so I'm gonna show you why we need this base right here. Okay. So what did you guys just see me do? I copied this link over from Bootstrap, right? And now we have some Bootstrap over here. So now I'm gonna go to album, and I'm just gonna look at the code. I hope this works. I'm gonna copy main right here. Just copy it. I'm gonna copy main. Let's go ahead and define one more endpoint. We're gonna call this test bootstrap. This one's gonna be bootstrap. Okay, so now we're gonna create a new file. We're gonna call this one bootstrap.html. What do
Need the T for the bootstrap.
Oh, my bad. Okay, my bad. Bootstrap. Okay, so then we're gonna go back over to our we're gonna be rendering bootstrap.html. Okay, so we have this bootstrap. Okay, we need to fix this right here. What am I gonna copy? Let's copy this main, see if it looks beautiful, okay? So let's just test. Can we get bootstrap to look beautiful? I don't have that path. Oh, my bad, it's called test bootstrap. I'm just gonna call it bootstrap. Okay. Okay, kinda. So we got the HTML here, but now we need what?
CSS formatting from the bootstrap.
Yep, so let's go ahead and look at these files. We're gonna go ahead and look at our head. Look at our style here. Album.css. Okay, so we can look at our sources. Look through our CSS. Somewhere in here. This is it right here. So I'm gonna copy all this. And then what can we do?
Import CSS.
Yeah, we're gonna do import our CSS, and this is gonna be inside of something called static. This is the pattern you have to follow. So now outside of templates, we're gonna have something else called static. I hope I did this right. Inside of static, we're gonna call it style.css. Okay, please work. This should be outside of templates. Okay, I hope this works. No. Did this not work? Ooh, why didn't it work? I think I saved it. Why is this working?
You imported bootstrap. Okay.
I did import bootstrap. I have a head right here. Does it have that file? Sources. Static. We have the file. Bootstrap. Whatever, this is not that important. The idea here though, guys, is just like inside of components that we need to be able to extend sometimes, right? And like share code. So that the most important thing probably for the base is a navigation bar, right? So let's go to the bootstrap and let's go ahead and find ourselves a navigation bar. We're gonna look at examples. Documentation. Look at components. We're just gonna look at navbar. And inside our navbar, we're gonna copy this code. We're gonna go to our base.html, and instead of having that h1, we're gonna stick in an actual navbar. That's probably what you really want. So we go back here, refresh our application. Now we have a navbar. Our navbar will work on every screen. Incredible. Do you have any questions? Actually, my bad. It doesn't work on our bootstrap screen. Why?
Because you haven't extended your base.
Correct. And now that I think about it, that's probably exactly why that style isn't working. I'm so stupid. Thank you guys. That's why I thought I did it magically. So this is how we're gonna build. Sorry, my bad. Do we have any questions so far? I'm gonna break right there and then once you guys set this up, I want you guys to find 4 different routes, and then just show 4 different contents on it, and then we're gonna move forward with the rest of the class, the afternoon class. Okay. How many did I just define, guys? I defined 3. Okay. I want you guys to find any other page that you want. But eventually know that we're going to build a blog page, okay? We're going to have a log in, log out. We're going to be able to create blog posts. We're going to be able to comment on them. We're going to be able to edit them and delete them. It's a full stack web application. We're going to have a model, a view, a controller. But right now, we're going to start small. This concept is big. It takes people months if not years, to fully understand this concept. Okay? So right now, what are the 2 things we're focusing on? Views and controllers. Okay, our controller needs to understand multiple routes. Like that. Okay? Know right here on line 9, this is one day going to be create a post. This is going to be something like show all posts. This is going to be edit a post. I mean something like delete a post. And post can be anything. It could be a user. It could be a assignment, homework assignment. It could be a score, anything. But we need to start small. We need to define some routes. And we need to render some templates. Okay? And also, I want you guys to go ahead and hook up Bootstrap. Get going. Don't ever not make it beautiful. All your apps should be beautiful. So you guys need to get Bootstrap hooked up and understand what the base.html does. It's like something that like has little children down. Basically, the base is what everything has. Okay? Oh my bad. Am I looking at the wrong one? My bad. Base is like this magical place that where like little children are going to be sucked in right there. Okay? Inside of line 53. Holy shit, that is really small up there. Inside of line 53 through 54, this shit will change. But the base is like, will stay the same.
One quick question.
Yes?
As I understand, this is server side. Right?
Yes. Yep.
So it's gonna re-render the page.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a problem. You guys will see that like for my app, it runs really quickly, right? But that's because the server is local. It's on the same machine. But imagine the server, I'm on my cell phone, I make a request, I'm in the mountains of Delat. I'm in the mountains, I'm about to die, okay? And I need to go to this website to find a hospital or something, right? I need to make a request. That request goes through my cell phone's, I don't know, antenna. It talks to a radio tower. That radio tower eventually gets to a server, and the server sends the data back, okay? Every single time that happens, it makes the app run slower. React is different. What Hai is talking about, when we wrote that code, we wrote the code, and the code was only one time. It was like after we processed it, it was bundled together into one file, and then we gave it to the user, and then they ran the entire application. And they would never ever have to refresh the page again. Right? But this is different. It's called server-side rendering. And this is how things used to be done before people really figured out what JavaScript could do for their applications. And once, in 2010, when all these M.V.C, when Backbone and then Angular and then React started appearing, they started killing this process. But we need to learn this process first because this is going to transition well into building APIs. Okay, so this is the pattern that you guys need to learn. Okay, so you guys, I've been talking for an hour now. You guys go ahead and get